Your money should serve you and your goals, not the other way around. At Eastern Planning Incorporated, we want to ensure your dreams are within reach, and this starts with a smart financial plan. Welcome to It's Not Just Money, It's Life with Matt and Beth Blecker. In our ongoing podcasts, we will give you clear and trusted guidance, teaching you how to use your finances to make your retirement years the fulfillment of your dreams, with a well-balanced life free of worry and stress. We are so excited that you have joined us. So, let's get started.
You are awesome. When the kids were born, you made sure all your legal documents were in place and your estate plans were well laid out. Good job. How old are the kids now? Have you updated anything? Beth Blecker has some suggestions if your offspring have hit the magical age of 18. I'm Patrice Sikora. Now, Beth, estate planning, it needs to change with the stages of life, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It's very, very important that people realize that what they've done 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago may not work anymore. And they need to at least just look, at least just question, and also make sure if there's changes in your life. And a lot of times there's changes. Somebody died, you hate somebody and you don't want them to be your executor anymore. So there's changes in your life and you need to make sure that your legal documents represent those changes. But one of the biggest things that people neglect is making sure that they're legally taking care of their children. Everybody does such a good job of taking care of their children. And if they go to college, making sure they set up going to college and doing everything for them and helping them move in. But one of the biggest problems you have at 18 is that they're legal, which means you might pay for everything, but you don't get told anything. So a lot of times you need to make sure you have the proper legal forms. And it's not necessarily because your children don't want you to know. It's because they don't know you can't know. And so one of the biggest things you need to do before you send that child off to college at 18 is to make sure they have a healthcare proxy for you, because if they do have something happen and they end up in the hospital, and this is not everybody, when they think of healthcare proxies or powers of attorney for healthcare, they think of, I'm not going to die. This is my 18-year-old isn't going to die. This is not necessary. But that's not what we're asking for. What you need a healthcare proxy for is to be able to help make medical decisions. And I'll give you a good example of a medical decision that you need a healthcare proxy for. One of my friend's children was in a car accident, and she ended up in a local hospital, and somehow they called her right away, and she was at the hospital. She lived like 6 minutes from the hospital. So she was at the hospital immediately. And there's good news. Her child was not yet 18. So she was responsible for every decision. They had her daughter go in, and she had a big gash on her face. And they were going to have a doctor in the emergency room sew her up. Mm-hmm. And the mother went, oh, no, you can't have that doctor, an emergency room doctor, sew her up, a big gash on her face. I want a cosmetic surgeon. I want somebody who's going to be able to make sure that she's okay. And she didn't need to have proof. She wasn't 18 yet. And lo and behold, there was a cosmetic surgeon in the hospital who came right down and did this wonderful job. There's hardly a scar on this child's face. And it was a wonderful decision. Had it been 5 months later, this decision couldn't have been made. The daughter wouldn't have known. The mother may not have even been called into the hospital. And the emergency room doctor would have done a decent job with the scar,
Right.
but not the same as a cosmetic surgeon. So when we talk about life or death, and when we think, oh, we don't need a healthcare proxy, my child, perfectly healthy child, why do they need a healthcare proxy? Because there are decisions that need to be made that are not life or death decisions. They are just very, very important decisions. And so if you just have that healthcare proxy and in your child's wallet, they have the card that says you're the healthcare proxy. And believe me, the EMTs, the hospitals, they look for that card. And if they see that card, they will call you and you will get notified and you will have that ability to give your 2 cents.
Mhm.
And as a
Right.
parent, you always want to be able to give your 2 cents,
Or
even for
$2.
a
It doesn't matter.
19-year-old,
Yeah.
right?
Now, this card, this is a very important piece of documentation. Where do you get the card?
The card you get with the healthcare proxy. So the person who is preparing your healthcare proxy usually prepares a card, like a medical alert card that
Right.
you put in your wallet, and it says, and it's a healthcare proxy, and it says that contact this person, and it has their phone number and their email address. And you keep that in. Sometimes you have on the other side, some of the cards have your primary physician's name on and number on it, but the most important piece is the healthcare proxy to be on the card. And you put it in your wallet and you have it there, and they look. That's one of the first things they look for, to see who they should contact. And if you're unconscious, that's very important. For a 19-year-old or an 18-year-old, even if they're conscious, they're scared. They don't know what decisions to make. And if you are contacted, you're there to help them and to make the good decisions with them, but they'll contact you because you're the healthcare proxy. And so it's very important. Another document that's also crucially important is a power of attorney a durable financial power of attorney, because this also helps you talk to the college for bills and payments and things like that. Whereas if your child is over 18, they may not talk to you. They may only send information through them. So it's very important. It's not as important as a healthcare proxy, but it's so easy to just get a healthcare proxy and a durable financial power of attorney. Healthcare proxies are sometimes called medical financial powers of attorney. So it's really, the name is not what's important. It's the document that's important. And it's not, you do it in the state in which you live, but it's not state by state. So if somebody lives in New York and they go to school in Virginia, the healthcare proxy and the durable power of attorney work in all states.
Oh,
so
that's
it's not like, oh, I got it in New York, now I have to get one in Virginia. No, it's good. It's fine.
Have any of your clients had the misfortune of running up against a school that says, "I'm sorry, we can't give you that information"?
Many times they do. And it's not necessarily the school only. There was a story, and so this is on the wild side of a story, but there was a story that one of my clients' 21-year-old son, who's a really good kid and gets good grades and all that, so understand that part of the story, but 21-year-old son, on his 21st birthday, they had this thing about bar hopping and having shots at each bar. And I don't know, maybe about the 14th bar.
Oh,
I don't know exactly which one, but he wound up getting sick and vomiting. And one of his very good friends got nervous and brought him to the hospital. And the very good friend called his mother, my client, and said that he's in the hospital and, oh my God, we're so sorry, and blah, blah, blah. But the mother couldn't get any information from the hospital. The friend couldn't get any information from the hospital. And it was like a lot scary
Yes.
because he's in the hospital. You assume it's nothing serious, but you don't know that for sure. And nobody's willing to give you any information. Had she had a healthcare proxy, she could have gotten all the information. She could have spoken to the doctor. Now you could get information with another form without being able to make decisions. And that's a HIPAA form. Because the reason that they don't give you any information is because of the Privacy Act.
Mm-hmm.
So if you get a HIPAA form, the form says, you can tell me stuff. I can't tell you stuff, but you can tell me stuff. So that's another form. But personally, my belief is you want that healthcare proxy. You want to be able to step in and help.
It's much more comprehensive. Yeah.
Yes,
Definitely.
absolutely.
All right. So what other legal documents does your 18-year-old need when they go to meet the world?
So not really anymore.
Okay.
For an 18-year-old, they're fine. They really don't need any more. They go off and they go to school, or they apprenticeship, or they get a job, or whatever they do. Those two forms are there to help you help them. And as a parent, you really should know that those two forms are for you to help them, not control them. Right?
That's a very good point.
So you don't want to step in too much. You might lose your rights if you step in too much. Like, give me that form, I'm ripping it up.
That's true.
Right? So, and they can do that. They can do that because they are legal. But so you want to be careful. But then there's as we were talking about stages, then there's another stage. This one's harder because in this one, you're actually helping in a place that people may not want you to help. And that is when they get older and they have a spouse and potentially a house and children.
Mm-hmm.
And so many people, even though at the beginning you said, well, you did a good job, you have your house and your children and you got your legal documents, so many young people don't because they're young.
Why is that? Yeah, they're young, but haven't they? I know we don't get the education on this that we need in schools.
Right.
But how can we get through to them that you really need these documents?
I find that when somebody steps in and says it to them, they listen. But I think what you said first is they don't get the education. It's not out there. It's not being told to them. One of the first things you should do when you get married is get a will, right? I think more right now you might be hearing you should get a prenup. That's not necessarily true, but a will is necessarily true. Once you start developing assets, it's very important. There's stories everywhere that says that one spouse died and the other spouse thought, oh, look, I'm going to get this whole 401k, or I'm going to get this insurance policy, and everything's all hunky-dory. And then they find out that the insurance policy has the spouse's mother who doesn't like that person.
Yeah.
And they keep the money. Yeah. So it's very, very important when you get married that you sit down and look at what you have, what your beneficiary designations are, who your beneficiary designations are. And then it's important to get a will. Back again, your healthcare proxy, because if your healthcare proxy was your mother, now you want to make your healthcare proxy your spouse. You want to get a durable power of attorney.
Yeah.
Your mother may not agree with that.
I was thinking the same thing.
Right. But you want to get a durable power of attorney. And you want to have those things updated. And when you have children, you want to make sure in your legal documents, you list the guardians. Now, when there's two spouses, the other is the guardian, right? And that's great. But if there's a divorce, if there's an issue, we need to make sure your wishes are on your legal documents. And it says, this is who I want. The other thing that's absolutely imperative, because you know, if you have children, your children are your contingent beneficiaries. Your spouse is first, your children are second, contingent. But children aren't allowed to inherit anything. They're not allowed to control money. So even though the money comes to them, they don't get to control it. So now, if you don't have a trust in your will that says, this is the person who's going to oversee my children's money, or you set it up and it gets complicated, and you really should probably talk to a financial advisor. That was my New York in me.
I got it, no problem. It's okay.
You really need to, because beneficiary designations on 401ks, 403bs, 457s, IRAs are confusing. And with the new Secure Act, which we spoke about, it's more confusing. But you must make sure if a child is under 18, it's either going into a trust or an UGMA, Unified Gift to Minors Act, with a trustee IRA.
Now,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, does the trustee have to be the guardian?
No, your trustee. So you can say, oh, my sister is the most loving person in the world, and I truly want her to be the guardian of my children. But financially, not so. So then my brother is really great with money, but I really don't want my sister-in-law in control of my children. So you make the brother the trustee and the sister the guardian, and we have a happy coalition, right? So no, they do not have to be the same. One of the biggest things that hold people up from writing legal documents is the spouses don't agree. Believe it or not. Now, it's best if they have wills that look like each other, right? So it's best if they both leave their will, and in their will it says the guardian is this person's sister, so the spouse's sister or my sister, right? And they leave the same people. But you don't have to. And what I tell my young clients is, each of your wills are your own wills. So you put down who you want. Don't argue. Don't spend 4 years fighting over who should be the guardian, and there's no guardian. You write down your guardian. He writes down his guardian, and the one who dies last wins.
Unless, and this is a little macabre, but what if they both die together?
Yeah, inside of the wills, they pick a who dies first.
Okay.
Right. So yeah. But more often it's just, is it the best answer? No. But is it better than not having a will? Absolutely. Absolutely. You're going to put it off and put it off and put it off. You need to have that will.
And how about explaining this to the kids? At what age do you say, folks, these are our wills and this is what we plan for you?
So that's a very hard conversation to have. Most people do not like to tell their children their financial worth. And so many of my older clients, children have become my clients, and the children will come to me and they'll say, I'm very worried about my parents running out of money. Now, privacy is a very important issue with me. And if I have more than one family member, I can't say, well, this is how much money they have. Don't worry. But what I do say is, don't worry. They're okay. Right. Or what we tend to do a lot of is have family meetings where I get to be the mediator and the parents and the children. Basically, a lot is on Zoom. Zoom's the best thing because it's very rare that you have a family that everybody lives in the same town. So, unless you want to have a meeting on Christmas Day, it's a little difficult. But we'll have family meetings and we'll sit down. And of course, we're not going to discuss the how much, unless the parent really wants to have that told, but usually they don't. But we're gonna touch on the where is the money and what is it invested in and what are your positions. So this one is the trustee and this one is the executor and this one is, so we'll discuss the who's named what and healthcare, and that's something that a lot of people do. What a lot of people do is they don't want to name one child everything. They feel
Right.
like, oh, that's not fair. So they'll name one child the healthcare proxy and one child the trustee and one child the power of attorney and one child the executrix. And they split it all up so that unless there's really just one child, that's the one that's taking care of them. And then we just explain that this one lives right near me. So we have to have everything carefully labeled. So that's very important. And we do that.
And you're actually getting to the next point that we wanted to discuss was what happens when your parents get old. We've had the kids, the parent is to the kids become parents, and now the kids are looking at you. You are the old parent.
Right. And the name has still been the sandwich generation. Here
Yeah.
you are with young adults and senior parents, and you sit there and you say, what's my role? How do I help? And again, it's that same conversation about how you don't want to step on toes. You don't want to force issues. But for older people, finances is the first thing that you can see change in dementia. So many times, and this is really a sad thing, but so many times my son or I notice something not consistent and not right with a client as they get older. We have all of our clients, we keep all of our clients' powers of attorney so that we have that ability, copies of their powers of attorney,
Right.
so that we have that availability to call their power of attorney. But we also have them sign a form that says we have the right to contact, and then they name who to contact. So that if we notice something, rather than the power of attorney calling us and say, mom's not doing well and I want to be able to call. And unfortunately, I've had to do that several times where I had to call a child and say, we've noticed that your mom is, in one case, it was she kept forgetting to come to the appointment. Even if we called her the morning of the appointment, she didn't show up and she went, oh, I forgot. That wasn't like her. And I called her daughter, and her daughter, she has two daughters and neither daughter lived nearby. And her daughter said, my sister and I have been talking about this. We've noticed something's wrong, but now that you're calling us, we need to do something about it. And they did, and they had her tested and all this, and they realized that she was really not capable of living home alone anymore. And they moved her closer to one daughter, and they sold the house. And I'm sure they would have come to that decision
At some time.
relatively
Yeah.
soon, but I think we helped in moving it forward. And so there's a lot of time. So we have software that sometimes the parents allow the children to share with them, that they can see their expenses, because you always hear about senior fraud and people and senior abuse and people, taking money that they shouldn't. But also a lot of seniors spend money that they shouldn't. And they gift to charities that they shouldn't. And they get caught up in all these subscriptions and all these things. And so we have a program where we actually put your account online, and you have your own private, in essence, website where you can see, and it's all secure and nobody is seeing it, and it's not like out in the public, and it's for budgeting. But mostly my clients don't need budgeting. What they need is the ability to see where things are. And in this case, it's excellent for a child to look into the parents' spending and say, oh my God, what are they spending all these $25 to all these
Yeah.
things? And yes, it's minor and nobody would have really noticed it, but
It adds
again,
up.
these are the signs.
Yeah.
And they get to see it.
Yeah. What about LTC, long-term care? How do you
Mhm.
deal with that?
Well, that I really think we probably need another whole podcast to talk about long-term care because it's really complicated now. One of the biggest ways I handle it is by having my clients get long-term care insurance. But as I said, I think we need a whole podcast on that because long-term care insurance has gotten very expensive and there's more types now and sometimes it just doesn't pay. So it's really complicated, but it's something that you need to look at sooner rather than later because the younger you are, the less expensive it is and the more chance you're healthier so that you don't have to pay extra because you're not healthy. So I would put that off. But one thing I do want to bring up in that you mentioned insurance is when you have in that sandwich, we're going down now. We're going back down to the children, right? When you do have children that have children, you want to make sure that they have good term insurance, enough term, inexpensive term insurance. Because God forbid something happens to those parents. And unfortunately, I've had this happen twice in my career, not once, twice, where something happened to the parents without insurance.
Oh,
And the grandparents had to, of course, step in. Who wouldn't? They have grandchildren. And they then spent several extra years raising teenagers without extra money, and it really completely affected their retirement.
sure.
It postponed it, and it took a big chunk of money from it. Not that you ever want anything to happen to your children, but you do want, and you also want it for your child if something happens to their spouse. So you want to make sure that both spouses have the insurance because without legal documents
Mhm.
and remember they're young, so we don't want to kill their budgets and we want them saving and we want them putting money in their 401ks, right? And saving money for college and all those wonderful things. So term insurance when you're young is very inexpensive. And so you just go out there and you know, I'm going to say this and it sounds like, oh my God, but you need at least $1 million to raise a child. So if you stop and think about it, you need $1 million policy. You can't just buy, oh, I'll get $100,000 policy. What will that
That's
do? 1
nothing.
year of college. I mean,
That's nothing.
right. Exactly. So you need to buy a nice big policy, each of you. So you don't want to spend a fortune on insurance. You want to just buy a term insurance. If you've got a 1-year-old, you want a 20-year term so that by the time they're 21 and out of college, we don't care anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? So it's very, very important on the insurance side that your children get insurance for your sake and theirs.
Beth, there's so many things that you've touched on here. Really, a financial advisor can guide people through all these steps, all these thoughts. How can someone reach you if they've got questions?
So to reach me, the easiest way to reach me is going to my website at easternplanning.com. And on my website, you get to see all kinds of literature and information, and you can look up things on your own without even having to contact me or Matt. Or on my website, it has a click here to schedule an appointment and for more information and to send information. So that's very easy if you just go to my website, easternplanning.com. And of course, I'm on LinkedIn. And of course, I'm on Facebook. So Eastern Planning has a Facebook page and it has a LinkedIn page. And Beth Blecker has a LinkedIn page. And Matthew Blecker has a LinkedIn page. Beth Blecker has a Facebook page too, but then you get to see my grandchildren. So if you want to see my grandchildren, go to my Facebook page.
That's awesome.
But I think those are the best ways to get in touch with us.
And there certainly are several, so there's no excuse.
No
excuse whatsoever.
excuse.
All right.
No excuse.
Beth, thank you so much. Beth Blecker. We will have to schedule that podcast on long-term care. too.
Yeah,
Definitely.
absolutely. We will.
Don't miss any episodes of Beth's podcast. It's not just money, it's life. All you have to do is follow. And please share with others. I'm Patrice Sikora, and thanks for being with us.
Thank you for listening to the It's Not Just Money, It's Life podcast. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Eastern Planning Incorporated. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning. Securities and advisory services offered through Royal Alliance Associates, Incorporated, RAA, member FINRA, SIPC. RAA is separately owned, and other entities and/or marketing names, products, or services referenced here are independent of RAA.